Greetings and welcome to week 6, unit 1 of the assessment course. The unit is related to rubrics. In the last week, we understood how to design MCQs and assignments. In this unit, we'll try to understand what rubrics are. In the outcome-based education system, the kind of assessment that you need to do should be in alignment with the course outcomes. To that extent, you have to select your test items, whether as a part of class test or at this end semester exam. So we classify the test items as written test items or performance test items. Written test items generally by and large will be they will have unique answers. Okay, for example, selection type, a response consists of making choices from some given alternatives. Then you have supply type of items. Let us look at what are the selection type. Whether a given statement is true or false, or you have multiple choice. Let's say you are given 4 or 5 choices, out of which you have to select one correct, what you consider as the correct one. Multiple selection, maybe out of 4 or 5 you have to select 2 correct ones. Then you have, if you have some kind of blocks to match, matching blocks is also one selection type of items. Then you may want to rearrange some items as a priority, as importance, whatever you consider. The question may require you are rearranging the given set of items. Then you have checklists. Then you have rating scales. These are some of the things that you already are familiar with in the previous weeks. And the supply type of items, completing a sentence, or if there is a blank in a sentence, you are filling in the blanks with maybe limited choice of words, or if it is automatic one, generally you have to select your fill in the blank from a limited set of words. Then you may want to sketch something. That is, a written description is given and you have to create a sketch for that. Then you may want to label something. You have to give, you are classifying something, and for each item you are giving a label. Then you have short answers, like 1 or 2 sentences that you will give for a question. Then you have a structured response, like solving a problem. You are going through a sequence of steps, that is a structured response. Then you may have a viva voce. Somebody asks you a question and you have to supply the answer. Then you have numerical questions, a problem to be solved. By and large, the numerical questions will have some kind of unique answer and an answer in a certain range of numbers. Then you have detailed answers like essays and so on. Or long answers, you explain something, you give your response to some structured question and so on. These are the supply type of items. Then you have performance type of test items. First of all, for performance type of test items, you do not have a unique answer. Okay, when you are conducting an experiment, there may be multiple ways of conducting the experiment which may be correct. Then how you are conducting the experiment, what is the quality, whether you are handling your equipment right, all that that means there is a qualitative aspect of that also. Then when you are simulating something, it involves in simulation certain assumptions, choice of parameters, and so on, whether you are finally simulating to get the required response from a system. Then your projects, obviously, project can be done in endless number of ways. So, what is the quality of your execution of the project? Then prototypes to be built. You are required to, let's say, build a circuit, make a model in the workshop, and so on. These prototypes can again be different, depends on your skill as well as its uh, correspondence to the specifications given to you to build the prototype. Or you have things, objects, equipment to be tested. Whether you are performing your test right with the correct set of parameters, correct set of outputs, and so on. Then you have discussions. In discussion, obviously, there is no unique way of making a statement, but still, somebody who is watching you can make a qualitative judgment how well you are discussing. Then you have seminars and presentations. Then you have field studies, you have vivavos, etc. You have several, you can still design many other types of performance test items. So here what happens is when we have a non-unique answer, then it is for the instructor to look at what you have exactly done, and you have to give a kind of qualitative assessment. Let us say whether you have performed your experiment properly, following certain sequence and getting the correct results. He may give you some 5 out of 10 or 8 out of 10, but that becomes very subjective. Here what we want is, instead of making it purely subjective, we try to make less subjective for performance test items by using what we are going to present as rubrics. Now, rubric doesn't make it exactly objective, but it reduces the subjectivity of evaluation to a great extent, and it also acts as a kind of an excellent communication to the students from the instructor how something has to be done well. Or what do you mean by considering you are performing right? So, formal definition of rubric is a systematic scoring tool scoring tool used to evaluate the response to a performance assessment item. Okay, an item is given to you, like make a presentation, write a short essay, or simulate something. But as we said, there are multiple correct answers. The quality of answer is to be evaluated using a rubric. But quality, instead of just merely making a intuitive judgment about how the student has performed, we follow certain methodology so that it is reasonably objective. Now, formal definition of a rubric is a systematic scoring tool, scoring methodology to make qualitative assessment and evaluation more reliable and objective by applying predetermined criteria. We are making your assessment and evaluation more reliable and objective. There will be still some subjectivity in this, but the subjectivity is drastically reduced by using a rubric. Now, what happens is, how do we reduce the subjectivity? By using descriptive criteria that serve as guidelines for scholars to assess, rate, and judge student performance. That means subjectivity is reduced to a smaller range. It can also be looked as a detailed checklist or a guide that clarifies expectations for both assessor and then person being assessed. They allow for standardized evaluation according to specified criteria, making grading simpler and more transparent. There are several ways of defining the structure of a rubric. Here we follow this particular method wherein there are several elements in defining a rubric. We will first identify the elements. First thing, before you design any rubric, you have to define the task. The task is defined by the instructor. Instructor will have to say what exactly is to be done and possibly a little more description of the task. What are all the things that need to be addressed? Okay, that is a description of the task. Then you have your rubric will consist of dimensions and weightage, which we are showing as a part of this table. Dimension and weightage. You may have several dimensions. The number of dimensions is the choice of the instructor, and the percentage weightage is also choice of the instructor. Then you have scale level 1, that means you have multiple scales, and you have scoring criteria. Let us look at each one of them separately. So there are 3 or 4 elements: dimension, weightage, scale levels, and scoring criteria. By using this, and if you can do it electronically, then it becomes very easy. It is not taxing on the part of the instructor to keep writing down something or giving feedback to the students. Now, let us take a sample task. How do you describe? Each student will make a 5-minute presentation of the description of the product he proposes to develop as his or her final year project. Okay, it's a 5-minute presentation the student is supposed to make. That is the description of the task. And further, we are giving what it should contain. The presentation should include user, context, market, and technology aspects of the proposed product, particularly paying attention to its preferability to other products in the market and feasibility of design and development within the available resources, monetary and time. Presentation should include appropriate photographs, tables, and relevant visual aids. That means by writing like this, you are already presenting what are all the things that instructor expects the student to present in his short presentation. Okay, that is how task is described. Now let us come to dimensional weightage. Dimensions of a rubric represent the parts or aspects of the task completely. See, there are several aspects to the let us say the task. For example, in short presentation, how many photographs are you presenting? Are the photographs clear? Are they self-explanatory? Is the language that you are using is satisfactory? Are the slides that you are presenting, are they properly organized? So like that, you can have any number of dimensions to that. But the number of dimensions, if there are too many, then evaluating the performance of the student becomes difficult, or then it will also become difficult to, let us say, to communicate to the student as well. And these dimensions that you choose, they also clarify for students how their task can be broken into components that are more important. That means what aspects should the student focus on. At least you have to make sure that he is not ignoring certain important aspects by maybe wrong assumptions or something like that. Okay, and this will also make it uniform across all the students in a classroom. Dimensions should represent the type of component skills the student must combine in a successful assignment, such as depth of understanding the content, content organization, assumptions made, use of appropriate language, analysis are the conclusions in an essay. So, for each task, the instructor will have to identify the dimensions he considers important. For example, somebody may consider the way a student gestures while making a presentation can be important. Some other instructor may not consider that is important at all. Okay, is the design of the product is it the design in a product development project? Is the design important or the end result is important? So this is the way you have to identify the dimensions. Okay, we will see examples. Now, some examples of dimensions are knowledge and understanding. That means if you consider that is a very important dimension, the instructor expects the student has detailed knowledge of the whatever he is presenting and he has understood well. Then another dimension can be communication. You are communicating it well. The use of visual aids, presentation skills, context, evidence, analysis, group presentation skills, group organization, operating with declared timelines. So these are some possible dimensions. Now what happens, let's say you are not going to use all of them as a part of any task. You will use a limited number of dimensions, we will come to that. And now having selected the dimensions, how much weightage do you want to give to each of these dimensions? For example, if you consider communication is more important than use of visual aids, let us say in a short presentation, I may give more percentage weightage to communication than the visual aids, like that. And the weight can be indicated as a percentage of total marks. If there are total 100 marks, I can indicate the importance or the weightage that I am giving by percentage of that. The dimension that you present, it should not include any description of the quality of performance which is indicated by the scale. So you only say a dimension, like communication is a dimension. Then you give percentage weightage in that. You are not saying what you consider as important or good communication. That comes as a part of criteria. Like this, sometimes the weightage given to all dimensions are not the same. In such cases, the weightages need to be indicated clearly. For example, dimension 1, 30%, dimension 2, 30%, dimension 3, 20%, dimension 4, 20%. You can alter these numbers as well. Total marks a student gets for a particular task, you should be computed taking these weightages into consideration. We'll see some samples. Now, the scale describes how well or poorly any given dimension of the task is performed. Let us say communication. Now, you may have multiple scales, like you consider excellent, competent, you need to improve and so on, you can write like that. Okay. And it can be 3, 4, 5 type of levels as well you can give. For example, some commonly used labels and associated marks or mark ranges are excellent. If you consider it is excellent, then 10 to 8 is the range of marks that you give. So even if it is subjective, but now your subjectivity is reduced between 10 and 8. Okay, if it is competent, 7 to 5, it needs more work, 4 to 0. Okay. Or the other ranges, these are only 3 levels that we have chosen. Whereas it can be 4, like sophisticated, 10 to 9, competent 8 to 6, partly competent 5 to 3, not yet competent 2 to 0. As you can see now you have 4 levels. Another one, exemplary 10 to 9, proficient 8 to 6, marginal 5 to 3, unacceptable 2 to 0. Another example is accomplished 10 to 8, average 7 to 5, beginning 4 to 0. Now, in the qualitative words that you're using like excellent, sophisticated, if you want, you can change these adjectives depending on the task that you have. Okay? Because for all tasks, same set of choice of words may not be appropriate. But the number of scales that you want to use, 3, 4, 5, beyond 5, it would be very difficult to mark. There are other issues associated with that. So you choose how many levels do you want to use. If you want to use a much smaller number of levels, then you are not differentiating between students. If you have too many levels, it will become difficult to mark. Okay, the labels, marks, and mark ranges may be chosen by the instructor after some peer discussion, because this is something that is going to happen in a department in all courses. So you spend some time initially to talk to your colleagues whether your particular choice of rubric, whether the choices are okay or whether there is any feedback that you can take. Now you come to scoring criteria. We require some criteria to score the performance of each student with respect to each one of the identified dimensions. That is, when do you call something excellent? I give marks between 10 and 8. You have to qualitatively you have to explain, if you have done this and this with respect to this dimension, we will consider it is excellent. Okay? But even in that, the instructor can be subject to whether you should give 10, 9 or 8 in that. Okay? And when you have the scoring criteria properly described, then they will be convenient when there are multiple evaluators of the same performance as a student. Okay? So that there is not too much of variation between there is intra-evaluators evaluations. There will not be. Provide it may be marginally different, but still it will be pretty close to one another. If these criteria are written with adequate detail, they lead to providing timely and detailed feedback to the student and to the teacher. It encourages critical thinking. It also facilitates communication with others. So how do you say something is even two evaluators, they want to discuss about something, these criteria will provide as the basis for discussion. Helping teachers to refine their instruction methods. Because if I am giving some marks, lower marks for many of the presentations, that means the students are not performing to your satisfaction, and this will become a feedback to the instructor. What is it that you should do so that the students perform better? And it also creates a level playing field for all, both for the evaluators as well as for the students. And it also saves considerable time to the teacher in marking subjective assessment. You cannot take each assessment and start writing long sentences to either to give feedback or to give your comments. If you have already predetermined criteria written down, then you just have to highlight that part. That's it, instead of rewriting all the details. And it also reduces the time to give feedback to the students. If the feedback is not given, the exercise itself will not have will not serve the required purpose, because the student doesn't know what he has done wrong or how to improve without getting feedback. Now we will look at a sample rubric. This is just a problem solving, which we will look at it in another unit in greater detail. Problem solving is a process of designing, evaluating, and implementing a strategy to answer an open-ended question or achieve a desired goal. Then what do? You design a form. We will show you the form where you indicate the student's name, possibly his roll number as well, and the task you are now further detailing if you want. Okay, this itself is a task. Means you give a problem, solve a problem, and give some details what the student should do. Okay, now this is a form that can be printed or electronically operated for all the evaluators. Here we have taken some dimensions. How many dimensions we are taking? 3 plus 3, 6 dimensions we are taking. Now, defining the problem. Okay. Now, let us say to start with, we are giving equal weightage to all of them. Okay. And if the problem has been defined satisfactorily, then I may give, we consider it as excellent, 10 to 9 we give. And in the last column here in the marks, we will give either 10 or 9. Or if it is not excellent but reasonably good, then I give between 8 and 5. Okay. So I put those marks here and combine all this and take the average over 6 dimensions. Now let us look at this. Excellent means here it demonstrates the ability to construct a clear and insightful problem statement with evidence of all relevant contextual factors. One can show an ideal example also. The instructor can show how it can be written and expect the student to follow that particular procedure. And in good, you have 8 to 5. This is further broken into 2 ranges, 8 to 7 and 6 to 5. That is, it requires a lot of effort to create this kind of detailing, like demonstrates the ability to construct a problem statement with evidence of most relevant contextual factors, and problem statement is adequately detailed. It is still not excellent, but it is reasonably close to that. Then between 8 and 7, again it becomes subjective. Whether you want to give 8 or 7 is again instructor or evaluator decides. Whereas if you are evaluating the student at this level, you just highlight this, that's all. That becomes the feedback. You are giving feedback to the student. He has demonstrated the ability to construct a problem statement with evidence. Now, if you want to further detail, begins to demonstrate the ability to construct a problem statement with evidence of most relevant contextual factors, but problem statement is superficial. So he is attempting to do that, but still the problem statement is not that very satisfactory. Then you give between 6 and 5. So here next 4 to 0 demonstrates a limited ability in identifying a problem statement or related contextual factors. Then subjectivity again. Between 4 and 0, you judge how he has done it and give that mark. In that case, if you are giving marks here at this stage, at this scale, then you have to highlight this sentence. That will be your feedback to the student. Similar thing are followed with other dimension. Identify strategies. Now, excellent means identifies multiple approaches for solving the problem that apply within a specific context. Okay, then only we give 10 to 9. Then if it is good and it is between 6 and 5, identifies only a single approach for solving the problem that does apply within a specific context. So he has given only one solution rather than multiple approaches. In that case, we are giving between 6 and 5. So similar thing is to be followed for the other dimension is propose solutions hypothesis. So which are the solutions that you are proposing? Whether they are sensitive to contextual factors or not, that you decide. And here it is highlighted here. The evaluation is given like this. The solution hypotheses are sensitive to contextual factors as well as the one of the following one of the following ethical, logical, or cultural dimensions of the problem. 8 to 7, a subjective number we give here. Now, other dimensions, I will not read all of them. Evaluate potential solutions, implement solution, and evaluate outcomes. So all of them have, as you can see, if you design a form electronically like this, it is very easy for the instructor to give, to highlight a corresponding criterion, and this becomes a feedback to the student as well. So after doing all these numbers, you now work out the total. Here, as we are considering uniform, that is same 6 dimensions carry the same weightage, then I take, let us say, out of 10 or out of 100 if I give something, or out of 10 if I give, then I compute the average and give the total marks here. I hope this sample is explains to you how a rubric is to be prepared and implemented. Now, where do we use rubrics? We will now go to in later units, we will go to specific type of performance items. But where rubrics are used, rubrics are widely used anywhere a consistent, objective and transparent method is needed to evaluate performance or quality against defined standards. So in education, we use it for classroom assessment, lab reports, creative works, or even participation people have been using, student self-assessment and peer assessment, learning guidance, curriculum and program evaluation, standardized testing, and so on. Professional workplaces, performance reviews, hiring and interviewing, project management and quality control, training and development, client evaluation. Competitions and contests also, you use that. You can use rubrics. Okay. Now, what happens is there are several other issues in competitions and contests. If they already know the criteria, people prepare exactly the desired answers and so on. But in each case, it has to be, these issues have to be resolved properly, like hiring and interviewing, what kind of questions are asked. Then I prepare exactly for those questions the answers and so on. So here we are mainly looking at, in our, this week we will be looking at classroom assessment mainly with regard to the kind of exercises that the instructor wants to use in evaluate performance items. Because what happens, performance items are somewhat are not given adequate importance because of the amount of work that is involved, either in creating the task or evaluating. If you have 60 students or 40 students in a section, it takes a long time for you to evaluate performance items. So to that extent, the time can be the time for the teacher can be significantly saved if you have a good rubric design, so that you are doing justice to the quality of the work by the student, as well as communicating in advance to him that what is the correct way of doing or desired way of doing, and it also gives good feedback to the student. Okay? Now, the burden of evaluation or reading and evaluation of the student performance has been significantly reduced by using rubrics. Now, a teacher can now think of at least giving a better performance items, because what exactly is outcome-based education? What the student should be able to perform at the end of the course, that is what is outcome. Okay. And if you want to measure that performance, obviously rubrics become necessary. Now, in the next unit, we'll understand how to plan rubrics for presentations. And thank you.